watching non-video people. Maybe I'll show them actually. Um, yeah, welcome everybody. I'm excited to have you here. Hi, Sarah. Good to see you. There's a lot of people off camera too. If you want to come on camera, that's great. We love seeing you. Totally get it. If not, um, I'm just gonna change a setting. We'll all change it after I start. Well, welcome everybody. My name's John Wolstone. If you wanted to come to Restoring Rites of Passage and Embodied Ritual in a Jewish context, you are at the right place. Um, yeah, I'm feeling really humbled and honored to be by some colleagues and mentors of mine, Rahel Ruach, Sarai, Nicolina Shapiro, and Rabbi Zelig Shalom Golden, who are going to be presenting with me. And we're also going to be dialoguing with all of you because, we have some things to share about being rites of passage guides and ritualists, also being Jewish and doing that in and out of Jewish spaces for many years. And we're really here to co-learn with all of you. Um, so maybe before we dive in, we can also take like a grounding moment. As good ritualists, we know the importance of thresholds. So I want to invite you, if you want to close your eyes, if you're on camera or off, if you're doing some tasks, maybe welcoming you to pause for just a moment, closing your eyes, just taking a moment to feel into your breath, feel into your body that's the breath is inhabiting. Just seeing if you can invite for a moment just a space of a little more relaxation. And just being present with whatever is moving in your system, just checking in, welcoming anything that's there. And just feeling for a moment what it's like to be breathed, to be a body, to be a human in space and time on Earth. Maybe even feeling the places where your body connects to the earth, whether that be the chair or the floor or your own body, touching your own body. And just giving yourself a moment of acknowledging some gratitude for your life, for your body, for your breath, for being here. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Welcome back to the spaces. And yeah, it's great to have you here. There's about as many people not on camera as on. I'll see if I can show the people not on camera too, but I'll change that setting in a moment. And just welcome. Um, we've all, Rahel, Sarai, Zelig, and myself have been doing rites of passage and ritual work in Jewish spaces and out Jewish spaces for a long time because we believe this work is really central to culture change. And we believe that being rooted in our ancestry, rooted in our culture, as complex as that is really paramount to being able to weave this rainbow tapestry of being global citizens at this time. So thank you so much for joining us in work that our souls have devoted ourselves to. My Zoom does occasionally freeze. It's like a Zoom thing I need to figure out. So I'm still here with you if that happens. Um, yeah, and how we're going to flow is that us four are each going to share for a little bit about our work, where we're coming from, and some of our experiences. We might riff for a bit, and then we'll open it up. And I'll say if you have like a burning question or a thought, put it in the chat. We definitely want to be engaged. Yeah, and then we'll have a lot of time to open it up and be able to, yeah, dialogue and see what's moving in you. So with that, I'm going to actually pass it over to Rabbi Zelig Golden to kind of kick us off and share a bit of his story of just, yeah, how his soul guided him to this work and what that has been for him. Zelig, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you, John, for convening us all, and thank everyone for being here. I see some familiar faces here. Hello, and for those who I'm not familiar with, hello as well. And I also know that there are some folks who are watching this as a recording. So greetings to you in the future. And I want to acknowledge Sarai Nicolina Shapiro, and thanks so much for being here. We've had a long journey of friendship and colleagueship going way back into the Wilderness Torah days, creating rites of passage work for youth, and then watching you grow and blossom in so many ways in your own work. So it's awesome to be here along your side, and to my wife Rachel. We've also had a long journey of doing different versions of rites of passage work, also the Wilderness Torah days uh, and beyond. And to John, John and I are currently collaborating on creating new Jewish initiation rites for men's adulthood, and so it's great to be here with you and collaborating. And the four of us, I think, provide a pretty good think tank for what it means to consider restoring rites of passage. So I'm humbled to be in the presence of you, and delighted to be in conversation as we unfold something. The way we're framing this is we're going to tell some story. Like, how did we each get into this work? What's our journey? Judaism, rites of passage, and how we're doing this. So I'm going to jump in. And I think what I want to say is, to begin, is that I grew up in a Jewish community, conservative Jewish community in my hometown of Spokane, Washington. And growing up, it all kind of made sense. And then when I left home, that sense began to break down because the needs, being off in college, off from the world, exploring, traveling, beginning to discover myself in deeper levels, Judaism, it became, I had a feeling of it kind of fragmenting inside myself, because the Judaism that I knew and grew up like didn't seem to have the tools for me in the stage that I was in. And so just a couple of snapshot memories. I remember being in the Cascades of the mountains of the North Cascades of Washington. These are the mountains, the wilderness of my upbringing, and being on what I call the knife blade edge, rock climbing, very steep, big mountains, and in hindsight, doing things that were dangerous. They were exciting. It was amazing adventure, but it was also really dangerous. And in hindsight, and after being mentored in rites of passage work by really grounded elders and teachers, I realized that I was, in some deep unconscious way, pushing myself to the edge of life and death in order to somehow initiate myself, which I think at some level I did, but my initiations came in little bits and pieces over a long period of time. And in truth, I don't think I claimed my true adulthood until a later stage in my life. And I wrote a Facebook post recently where I was kind of like transparently saying, it's like I had my youngest child at the age of 46, and I wish at some level maybe I could have baked myself earlier, and if I had a culture around me, maybe I would have moved into that stage of life earlier. I don't have regrets. My children are amazing. My family's beautiful. And when I think about the kind of culture I want to live in and who I want to support, I would love for the young adults coming in behind me, or the adults by my side who haven't had these rights yet, to get supported to make these passages in a smoother and perhaps more timely way, and also in ways that are both to the edge but are safe. Because one of the hallmarks of culture today, in my opinion, is that we have adults who are living in what is, in a sense, a suspended adolescence. The centrality of adolescence in my usage here means that the thing at the center of the person's life is really themselves. If I look at our daughter Emma, who's going to have her bat mitzvah in June, who's at the center of her life? It's Emma. She's figuring herself out, and she has all these aunts and uncles constellating around her, and hopefully her parents, and that's correct, for her stage of life. But when you have adults in their 40s, 50s, 60s, etc., and they are at the center of their lives, what do you get? You get, well, late stage capitalism, you get wars, forever wars, you get people like Trump running the country. You get, I had a really amazing moment where I was watching Tony Blair, the former Prime Minister of the UK, in COP26, the Glasgow climate change talks, and this is a conservative, like a Tory from Britain, saying the real problem isn't climate change, people. The real problem is that we have people who are in suspended adolescence. We have a culture that's stuck in adolescence. We need to break out and initiate the people into true adulthood. I was like, whoa, that was Tony Blair. That's crazy. We're onto something. Um, I didn't know that these ideas back when I was doing my own initiation work, and but sometime around 2007, after deep work of unpacking certain psychological pieces in myself, I went up on the mountain. This is 2007 to do my first what we call a vision quest or prayer fast. And sitting up at that mountain alone, having um, prepared myself, I came into contact with spirit in a new way, and then with my soul in a new way. And I had been supported by a container with an elder. His name was Mike Bodkin. That was the organization called Rites of Passage. And when I came down from the mountain in that vision quest in 2007, I had the first time where I had a really clear vision for my life. And that vision was the vision of Wilderness Torah. Within Wilderness Torah, I began to ask the question, how do I manifest this vision, which was bring your people back to the earth. This was for me, the micro seed of what would become earth-based Judaism, and then getting mentored by elders. And what I thought was Judaism in nature actually became Judaism with a cultural revival that we called village building. And the centerpiece of village building, which I could not have foreseen this, was helping the youth engage in soul-centered rites of passage. Yes, the bar and bat mitzvah, but even more importantly, putting them out on their own rites of passage work, which what became through our training with people like John Young, who had been trained by other indigenous peoples for many years, a sacred fire ceremony all night long. I was an experiment, and I see Lisa Gottfried here, and her son Mo went through this rite of passage, and it's amazing to have you here because he is like one of my shining examples. I think it really worked for him, and he was like our early, experiment, our guinea pig. And Leah, that's right. Thank you. And it turns out that kind of rite of passage work is really powerful and profound. And then, because we live in a world of suspended adolescence, I watched my wife doing, and she'll speak about this, doing rites of passage work for women on the cusp of adulthood and saying, there's actually a whole initiation rite missing. And so for many years, Rachel's been doing initiation rites with women. And then John and I go, wow, Judaism is completely missing the rite for men. And so we're bringing that back and we're bringing that to the Jewish community through Brit Adam, learning from many of our predecessors. And I have lots to tell about that. And I'm seeing time. So I want to pause and pass it back to John. That's a little bit about my tale.
Thank you, Zelig, so much. And just so much gratitude. I don't know how you all have come to this, but I know that my path was completely opened by Zelig and Wilderness Torah and that work, and just so much gratitude, and that's how I know Sarai and Rahel also deeply. Yeah, and actually Lisa's son Mo is now the physical therapist for my father in Colorado, and just the way the web weaves when we really build culture. So that's so cool. And next I want to pass it to Rahel Ruach, who has come to this work in like her own deeply embodied wild way, very different, I'd say, than Zelig, but also similar. And Rahel, it's so awesome to have you here, as you've been a key mentor and ally and friend in my life. And I'm grateful to welcome you here to share what parts of your story feel relevant and true now.
Yeah. Wow. What a beautiful reason to be congregating right now. It's beautiful and timely and important. Well, my own journey, I mean, in some ways similar to Zelig, like I think our journeys into this work often comes from our own personal painful path of bumping up against this invisible wall. I remember when I was in my 20s, I was like, I feel like I'm pressed up against this thing that I can't get through and I can't get over. And it's called adulthood. And I don't know how to become it. And, and so it was like, it became this deep, like not straightforward, but quite windy journey for me. That was a good at least 10 years of a kind of conscious journey. And all the while I'm thinking, as I'm like running into obstacle and I'm blind this way, but then seeing this, because now I've hit it, I'm like, it doesn't have to be this hard. We don't have to, young people don't have to take 10 years. We could do this in 1 or 2 years if they're actually held and guided. They don't need to be bumbling along without a map. So I'll just name that I run an organization called Tree of Life. And in that, we focus both on initiation rites for youth, that is, and for female bodies, we call it first moon time. So the first moon time rite. And then we also focus on the initiation rite for adulthood. And both are powerful and amazing experiences when you really hold young people through this sort of sweep of life. And now I'm in this stage in my life where I'm starting to turn my attention to the next rite for me, which is this menopausal, thank you, Zelig, for posting it, this menopausal rite, which I call wisdom rite. And in our journey, when we take young people into this, like starting to face this adulthood portal, there's some like core essential pieces that we just start with right off the bat. It's like foundation. And one of those pieces is connecting to the natural world. Super important. Where do we get our sense of reality from? Okay. A second is ceremony, really important factor. A third is anchor systems. Who is it that's holding you, got you, guiding you, anchoring you? But the fourth one that is like one of our really initial assignments is your ancestry. Who are you? Where did you come from? Whether you're conscious of it or not, you're walking with a lineage. Let's get conscious of it. And so in my own journey, here I was bumbling around and like, well, where did I come from? Who am I? Anyways, I'm in this American society that is so freaking whitewashed. Like it doesn't have any sense of anything and is leading us to really troubled places. So I better stop and look backwards and understand some things. And so in my own journey, when I started facing that question of, well, where did I come from? This deep inquiry around my ancestry. And for me, I have ancestry that's European and I have ancestry that's Jewish. And wow, it went, I didn't grow up with a lot of Judaism. It wasn't, I grew up in sort of here, actually, in the Sebastopol region in hippie commune land. And so when I started looking into my ancestry, it became this like love affair of reacquainting myself with something that is so important and so ancient. And it's opened up so many doorways and passages, and it's created aliveness where once it was just blank, And so I'm just naming the importance of what is it to reclaim culture, because rites of passage work is most powerful when it's embedded in community. And it's most powerful when it's embedded in something that feels relevant to the young person, to their reality, but then also embeds them in something real that really like anchors them in a deeper reality than what we're thrown at in modern society, which is pretty, as we know, it's got troubles. So yeah, my journey was rich and beautiful. And it's also led me on the path that has allowed me to create spaces for other people to go on a similar journey. I'll just name last thing, perhaps, in being able to merge these realms of nature connection, of ceremonial work, and of ancestry, embedding with other awesome people, including people who are real elders. it's allowed us to start opening the field up. And one of the places that we've been doing that recently, that's not necessarily about adulthood initiation, but is about bringing culture back, is starting to listen in a much deeper way for what is it to reclaim these ceremonial, these the Chagim throughout the year. And the one that we've been spending a lot of beautiful time on is the end of Sukkot is really bringing back to life the rain dance. And this beautiful ceremonial, sorry, I'm at a place where there's a phone. This beautiful ceremonial rite of dancing and praying for rain, which is in the Hebrew canon, and then what is it to actually bring it back to life in a way that we get to be in real time with it. So, and real connection to spirit, which is its own conversation. So I'll end there. Just grateful for the whole realm of what this is, the reclaiming of culture, the reclaiming of rites of passage, and more power to you, John, in helping hold us in this conversation today.
Thanks, Rahel. Yeah, and just, I mean, there's so much I want to say. I'm just also feeling so uh, grateful and joy at seeing my friends and allies and mentors sharing, because like I'm still so much I'm learning. And also, one thing I know, Rahel's been a big part of your journey, is also like receiving vision and maps and things in the context of Judaism they've been able to apply elsewhere. And I think that's one of the benefits of coming back into our cultures, that we have like a cultural framework that then like in visionary spaces, information can come through that then can like map out and support the rest of our lives. So you are a master at that, and we're all really cultural like visionaries here, and I include all of us on the calls. I think that's what it means to be human. And with that, I want to pass it to Sarai. When I came into the wilderness Torah scene, Sarai was high up, and my first memory of Sarai was like singing this amazingly beautiful song and so easily getting everybody into it. And I grew up Jewish, but that's like not the way I grew up Jewish. And it was so I was like, wait, this can be fun and embodied and amazing. And that's just been my experience of Sarai's experience being Jewish and being a cultural rites of passage ritual leader. So Sarai, thank you for being here. And I'm so look forward to whatever parts you want to share of your story and your work.
Thank you, John. So good to be with everybody. I'm noticing my internet has been going in and out, so let me know if there's any issues. um, yeah, it's so good to see you, Lisa. Yeah, I really feel just the passing of time and how these initiations and rites, they, when we're in them, we don't necessarily know what they're even doing, but how they play out in our lives over time, and how we've been able to witness that with your children. What do I want to say? Well, firstly, I want to say that we're right around Rosh Chodesh for the month of Sivan in the Hebrew calendar, which is a special time to be talking about this as we approach Shavuot, which is the holiday of revelation, where we walk towards the mountain and like God and Spirit comes down and meets us in this divine union. And I think that's a big part of what is woven into the idea of initiation and the idea of how do we become a spirited being, one who's not just walking around in our egoic structure, but is connected to something much bigger than ourselves. And that being God, Goddess, the divine, our ancestry, our previous lifetimes, like this much bigger picture that we're woven into. One distinction that I really like, that I've heard through Bill Plotkin, is the difference between healing and holing, and that they're both really necessary, and I think our modern society in the healing world is very focused on healing, on like what's wrong, how do we fix it, how do we psychologize and figure out what trauma I had when I was young and try to understand it and even do somatic work around it. And all of that is really, really important and a really big piece of the puzzle. But I think the other piece of the puzzle that is less understood currently in our society, which I think those of us on this call who have been doing this work have been seeding, and many, many others seeding, is the holding aspect, which Rachel spoke to really eloquently, of what is it to become part of the web of life again and to not feel like we're in this kind of isolated experience of our own egoic identity. And I think that that is the ancient understanding of life, right? Is that all life is interwoven and interconnected. And when we're born into this current society where we're told everything is separate and compartmentalized, including ourselves, we feel really weird. And most of us grew up feeling weird and still probably feel weird, like something's just not quite right. I know I did, and still feel that way on certain levels. And so my inquiry into why do I feel so weird has led me again and again to rites and initiations that require like leaving this society for periods of time and going out into wilderness spaces and putting my feet on the earth and listening to the mountains, to the waters, to the trees, to the wise ones that surround us, and embedding myself in communities that are reflecting that back to me, right? And for me, my journey with Judaism started when I was young. I was in a Reconstructionist community in Philadelphia. So I got a pretty good, groovy version of Judaism, which I feel really blessed to have received. Um, but I still didn't feel like, I fully claimed it, even though I had a bat mitzvah until my early 20s when I ended up at Elat Chaim Retreat Center in upstate New York. And I went there, like, I think it was after my sophomore year in college. And I remember the moment. Oh, Alon is, maybe you can mute Alon. The little sound is coming through. Um, I remember the moment when I was sitting in a Shabbat Shacharit service. We were outside and we were singing this Shefa Gold chant, Manara Hamakom Hazeh, and the Torah was being passed around and was being carried by this elder woman, a grandmother who had never carried a Torah before and never been bat mitzvahed, but was so elated to be in this moment of connecting to this sacred text that had been brought down through the generations. And I sat there and I felt my roots just go deep down and reconnect to my whole Jewish lineage in that moment in a way that felt more real than it ever had before, deeper than my own personal ancestry. And it's significant to me that that was a moment where there was a woman carrying a Torah, an elder woman carrying a Torah. We were outside on the earth, and we were singing this song that was about how beautiful Hamakom Hazel, like how awesome is this place, right? And when we talk about this place, this is where we, I think through ancient times, this is where we've sourced our entire tradition, was through our connection to place. And now, in these times, how do we, as transplants who have migrated from so many different places around the world, how do we reconnect with place and not just see this body of teachings as this kind of, canonized piece of revelation that is unchangeable, but how do we take it and make it have meaning in our lives right now in the places where we currently reside and deepen our connections. So I see it as, a tree, and the Hebrew letter for this month is Zayin, which is the long, it's like a long letter, and it connects above and below. And I think about that as that's the core essence of Judaism, is connecting the upward facing triangle and the downward facing triangle. It's connecting the above and the below, right, in this time of revelation. So so how do we take what has been passed down, maybe a little bit more as that, like the leaves or what's above, what's sprouted from the places that we've lived, and then reconnect it down with where we currently are, and find where that union is, right? And there's so many teachings in Judaism that point to that divine union between what is above and what is below, to Kadosh Baruch Hu, to this exalted place of the infinite source of God, and the really embodied source of Shekhinah, of embodied wisdom and spirit. So for me, as I moved through Elat Chaim, I was I was an intern there, and we ended up finding a teacher who was a native man who basically brought us into a much deeper connection with the earth there. He was not Jewish, but there was a bunch of us in our 20s that all started studying with him. And so while I was living at this Jewish retreat center, I was also, going out into the woods and eating wild plants and tracking animals. And so that was kind of the beginning of where like that connection between these two places started sprouting for me. And over the years, I found my way out to the West Coast and supported Wilderness Torah in its first few years to really beef up the Rite of Passage program and helped direct that for some years. And um, yeah, and through that, really getting a chance to experience what it is to bring together those two aspects of that deep connection to place and land and spirit and community with the teachings that have been brought down. And I find that when we do that, the teachings of Judaism become alive again. Like they're not just like this inert thing that we're reading in synagogue and we don't really know what we're saying. They become alive again, and they have an opportunity to grow and change and evolve as well. Um, so yeah, and then through the years, there's many different places and ways that I've studied and gone through my own initiations, doing vision fast work, doing medicine work. Most recently, spending more time down in South America with the Shipibo and learning from indigenous people about what it is to have that really, really deep intimacy. What is that intimacy? That the technology that helps us to reconnect. And every indigenous culture around the world before colonization absolutely knew how to do that, or else they would not have survived. So it's a blessing when we get to, in these days, study and learn from people who are still holding those sacred threads. So I currently offer retreats mostly for women, doing backcountry retreats, nature-based retreats. We have a current one coming up that's called The Wisdom of the Waters. That's about connecting with the water as sacred medicine, and also have Jewish medicine retreats that I offer. So, and somebody else here is from Philadelphia. Woohoo! um, yeah, so it's been a journey also of connecting the threads of the Jewish culture with doing deeper medicine work, and how that allows us to have our own deeper revelations around these holidays and times of the year. Um, that yeah, that has been so rich. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and connection to this work, and feeling grateful to be here with you all, with John and Zelig and Rachel
Mm.
and everybody here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarai. Um, yeah, I'm having this memory. I was at a retreat, like a Jewish medicine Shabbat retreat with Sarai, like a year and a half ago, I think. And I've done actually Zelig was the one who connected me to like therapeutic medicine work, which I'm sure many of you are aware of. And it was having done that work for a long time, had it been a big part of my own healing journey. It was so profound to be able to be in that space, in also a Jewish space, and the type of synchronistic magic that was able to unfold when we were doing that much opening, but like bounded in culture. It feels like actually so much of what we're talking about in that union of spirit and matter. So, Sarai, thank you for doing that in your own beautiful way. I love hearing more of your story. Also, um, okay, so I'm gonna put it on gallery so
And
I
I
can
have
show
my
you what I have.
first I have my first album coming out this Saturday that has some Jewish influences to
Yay!
it. So stay tuned.
Yeah, check it out. I'm so excited for that, Sarai. And yeah, and I just wanted to acknowledge Sarah, your comment. Say, Sarah, hi. I know Sarah from a ceremonial community down in New Mexico that's done like Native American ceremony for a long time, which is also where I reconnected with Zelig and kind of we got to drop in deeper. And I just love what you shared, Sarah, about like you being bat mitzvahed at that synagogue and that bringing life back to the synagogue and the tradition is I think so much of kind of the undertone culturally of what we're talking about is in some ways bringing the feminine back into Judaism where I got kind of lost in diaspora and disconnection from the earth. And there's very much, along with like earth-based Judaism, it's like feminine, embodied, juicy Judaism, I'd say is like the Judaism I found that's really awakened my soul. So just feel you on that and just so much of that there. So, wow, if myself 13 years ago when I met you all, Sarai, Zelig, and Rahel could have seen what I'm doing now, I would have been like stupefied with joy and wonder, which is almost how I feel. So we'll see if I can get it together to speak. So, I grew up, I feel like probably more similar, I'm guessing, to how many Jews grew up in like a family that was like kind of Jewish, went to like high holidays, and it was very stale, it was very boring. And after my bar mitzvah, I wanted nothing to do with it. And that's because in that time of diaspora, whatever happened, however we want to say that, it just really became like rote and lifeless, and it didn't really feel like there was a space for me to co-create or really feel embodied or really have meaning inside of the tradition. That's when I thought Judaism was like a religion in kind of the toxic way that religion can be. And there was a long time where I kind of drifted. And then as a young person, like really was like almost felt like I could leave my Jewishness behind. I somehow, by the grace of God, Baruch Hashem, met Wilderness Torah, and all of a sudden got woven back in with these people that were like some of the coolest people I had ever met, and like were just embodied and sexy and beautiful and like culturally vibing, and they were Jewish. And at that moment, that was like cognitive dissonance. I was like, how can those be the same thing? Um, and at the same time, I was in my like early mid 20s, and I really was in this question of like, what the heck to do with my life? The cultural maps I'd been given in a very unconscious way by the adolescent culture we had, like, were definitely not making sense. I was not feeling inspired to go like make a bunch of money at a job that I hated to then like drink whatever all the the things that are cultural like classics that aren't really working. So I found out through Wilderness Tour, really through like Sarai and Zelig and Rahel, about people like Bill Plotkin and John Young, about adulthood initiation. And I really went on my own, like, hey, if that's true, that initiation was real in every culture, and that this was the place where you not only culturally and psychologically, spiritually matured into adulthood, into like a sense of connection with everything and life and death and that capacity to serve life, but you also found your core vision for your life of why your soul incarnated. I was like, okay, what else am I doing but doing that thing? So I went on this like quest to get initiated. There wasn't men's initiation work at the time. Rahel was leading Tree of Life, but I wasn't in a female body, so I couldn't jump into that. But luckily, I was able to anchor Zelig and Rahel and later Sarai as like mentors and allies on the path, and that really helped me slowly learn and spirit leading me. And the more I felt that I rooted actually in my ancestry, the more I was able to really ground in all of that huge high energy that my soul was buzzing with. And I don't think I could have done it if I wasn't slowly weaving myself back into Judaism. And it took a long time. There's a lot of internalized anti-Semitism and just like cultural friction to my own journey. And it's really only say the last few years where I can like proudly and publicly be say that like I'm leading a Jewish men's initiation journey. And that's I'm just letting you know like the kind of cultural weight we're sitting in, especially in these times as Jews. And I think what happened in that time for me practically hating being Jewish to now where I feel like I hit the ancestral jackpot. I'm so lucky. I'm so blessed. Was this sense of coming into like the restoration of rites of passage and embodied ritual in Jewish culture. And I want to say it wasn't just the rites of passage work, it also was the way that Judaism has a map. We have a calendar that literally takes us through the rites of passage of the year, and not just like the deep agricultural, ecological journey of that. And if you haven't heard, Zelig, Sarai, or Rahel teach on the Jewish Wheel of the Year map, it's one of the coolest inheritances that we have ever, and it's like very intact. given how much, culture has shifted and changed. But it's not just the agricultural ecological map, it's also this like deep psycho-spiritual map. And then that you get to go through this like process in your year of like we're coming to Shavuot and Revelation and opening to vision, having come out of the birth canal at Pesach like 7 weeks earlier, and moving towards the summer and the time of grief and the high holiday, so that we can purify enough to pray for like rain, which is kind of what that whole cycle was honestly about. Um, and just that sense of being able to do that deep inner work in community and like with my sense of ancestors. I actually have my ancestors on an altar here behind me. It's been so meaningful. And I want to say, like, some of what I learned in this cultural milieu that I was in is that when I went to Eastern Europe on ancestral pilgrimage in 2019, which is one of the most meaningful and like heartbreaking, beautiful times of my life, I had enough like embodied ritual knowledge to know how to like be doing a ritual in a way where just the immense grief and loss of being in that kind of place didn't just destroy me, but was able to really be a generative thing and a path of reconnection. And that came from so much practice in this culture. And also getting a chance, I also worked with Wilderness Torah doing the B'nai Mitzvah Rite of Passage program for youth. And it's feeling that whole cultural wheel helped me have enough courage to even go do something that no one in my family had done since my ancestors left Eastern Europe. And which was a really important part for me of my own soul figuring out why I'm here. And maybe the last thing I want to share is that all of that deep rite of passage work and so much of what the initiation portal, especially, but I think it happens at every life stage is really about vision. And I'd say that we're living in a time where we're really in a poverty of vision. And I think also the key is because vision can also be its own oppression, right? We've all know about manifest destiny and like this really disembodied head thing, and that's not what I'm talking about, but this vision when it's actually created space in the body and there's been enough ritual and cultural body to hold us to really be accessing information from the other world, like finding that vision for my life, which has really been about making human beings capable of being in service to the Great Turning, which is literally the words I heard on my 4th year of Vision Quest at Arawaka, where I know Zelig and Sarah, which really for me, making humans is what healthy rites of passage is. It's what healthy culture is. Because the idea is that human beings, we aren't just born, we're also crafted by the culture to become like what some people call real human beings. And I think that's what we need, like real adult grounded human beings that know how to work with life and death, know how to feel connected to everything and know where they come from. And last thing I'll say is that there's a lot for me of exciting horizons of also how I'm using embodied Judaism as a pathway of connection to wider culture. I wrote a grant this year from the city of Boulder, where I live now in Colorado, to do a snow dance inspired by the work I've done with Rahel and Zelig and Sarai and the rain dance for so many years. And it's going to be held with a Jewish root, but in a like non only Jews participating bigger offering to the ecology here, which if you haven't heard, we had the worst snow year on record. We're in mega drought, and it's like a big problem. I think because people aren't participating in the ecological cycles in that way. And I've also seen Sarai do that beautiful work with Shabbat of like what is opening Shabbat consciousness to other people. And I think for me, I think there is a certain vision I see of Jews and all cultures weaving and giving their cultural gifts to the world. And we need to learn again to like inhabit the culture and support that cultural rite of passage while happening for us to be able to stably give those gifts. We're not just in like tribal defense protections. So I think I'll end it there. Maybe we can all take a breath. And I just want to see, I want to feel you in the crowd, if you have questions stirring, but I also wanted to just pass it back again, just open it up for if Sarai, Zelig, or Rahel, if you have anything that like caught you or inspired you, or you're like, oh, this is one piece I want to add to kind of complete some of the offering here, please just unmute and take it. And then we'll open up to questions in just a few minutes.
I'll say something. In that, wow, first of all, amazing, just so much to catch and hear and digest. Um, and one thing that's been helpful for me in this journey of rites of passage of like, what is this? What are we doing? How are we becoming more human? How are we helping these young people in particular um, really come into themselves? And one of the things that helps me out a lot is I working with what is the definition of adult that we are working with? What does it even mean to be an adult? And I just wanted to pass forward the definition that was given to me by my elders that I work with and have been working with for the last, whatever, 18 years or so. And that is that we're curating people to have three aspects. And the first aspect is to know themselves enough to have a sense of what their own gifts are. What's my unique stamp that I was given as I came into this world that I'm here to do? Who am I in that regard? The second is to know themselves as divine. And however they want to frame their God relationship, doesn't matter what the semantics of that are, but that they can see the world around them is infused with the divine and that they too are a part of it, that's also in them. And then the third aspect that we're working to curate is that they are ready and able to be in service to something larger than themselves. They've done the deep dive well of the and spent that time navel gazing. Like that navel gazing self-absorption is actually a healthy, important phase of adolescence, but we don't want to get stuck there. And so what is it to really allow ourselves to go deep into the well and then come out the other side? We've been fed and nourished enough so that now we come out the other side and now we're actually ready and able to be in service to something larger than ourselves for that rest of our life. So I just wanted to ground how we in the work I do, and I think it permeates with Sarai and Zelig and John too for adulthood.
Yeah, thank you, Rahel. And yeah, I have taught on initiation, and I always pull this part out, Rahel, from so many beautiful teachings you've given about the structures of this. And I also want to say, for those of us modern people that, we didn't grow up in a like fully intact rite of passage culture, even if we grew up in a very Jewish space, likely in that, we're also in this day and age, in modern people, we're constantly weaving and repairing pieces. Like, even though I'm so deep in this work, I still have pieces of my adolescence or even healthy childhood that I'm still like repairing as I'm stepping deeper into my vision and gift giving as a adult. So I just want to normalize that, like, that's also part of what it is to hold this work in this time, and I think that maybe always was how it was, and why we have a really healthy life wheel, so that you also can find your inner child, adolescent, adult, and elder at any stage, and have living examples to really support you finding those parts within yourself always. Um, yeah, Zelig.
Yeah, well said. Thanks, Rachel, for that map, and I think it's initiation isn't the next layer of our psychological work. It's although it has that dimension at some level, but one of our mentors um, spoke about if you're walking towards initiation, you're choosing to do adulthood initiation for your own self-improvement, like don't bother because this isn't about you. Ultimately, I actually feel like doing initiation work with men, I give men an opportunity to help them find their place. And in doing so, yes, they have relief. Anxiety is reduced. The sense of being lost, like what the F am I doing here, is transformed. But it's not about the individual figuring out their psychological material like in therapy. It's about realizing that we are a piece of a greater puzzle and we are asking Creator to help us fit back into the fabric of reality, the fabric of the world that we dwell in. And that is something that schools don't teach us. That is something that our sort of modern industrial economic system doesn't necessarily even want us to know about, because keeping us separated and working for this overculture um, isn't necessarily to the benefit for us to find our gift and serve for the greater good. This is some level as anti-capitalist, although it doesn't have to be. But this is about service. This is about finding our place to serve. And one thing I want to say about initiation in a Jewish context for adults is that I don't think Jewish culture actually ever provided this kind of initiation rite. I think Rachel earlier said, and maybe John, I'm not sure who said it, that every, maybe it's Sarai actually, that every, like earth-based or indigenous culture had some kind of rite to help us go through the portal from adolescence into adult. Because if we didn't have that, the tribe wouldn't survive. And that's absolutely true. And I think that in Judaism, actually, it was the chuppah is the closest thing we have, because there's an assumption in normative Jewish culture for like a long time that once you cross the threshold into quote unquote adulthood, be mitzvah, being a child of the mitzvot, maybe you take on the obligations and duties of the Torah and all the mitzvot, do this and don't do that, and all the sacred instructions, which is absolutely gorgeous. It's a whole map unto its own. But getting married and having children and then fitting into society, that was the map. But that's not what Jewish adults are doing anymore until their 30s or 40s. So what happens in between 13, some in their 20s, but like, let's be honest. So what happens between the age of 13 and that later adulthood? There's this whole zone of suspended adolescence that isn't nurtured by normative Jewish culture anymore. And people get lost in that. And I think Judaism actually loses its relevance. So in working to craft a Jewishly rooted adulthood initiation, we're bringing a new piece of culture forward based on maps that have been, come to us through vision, but also through mentorship and other cultures to help us find how do we, now that people are living much longer lives, and the B mitzvah is really an initiation right into adolescence. What is the missing piece for that next stage of life? And I just want to name that. And so, yeah, I'm curious if Soraya wants to bring your voice again before we go to questions, or should we go to questions?
I am curious about questions. Yeah.
I want to say something. Um,
Right. Jump in, Lisa.
Given that I have now uh, kids in their 20s, I see it. I see the fact that, whatever I did as a parent to help raise them Jewishly, help show them what's possible, it does feel like a no man's land in terms of Judaism for all three of my children at the moment, and they're all in their 20s. So I would concur based on my observations in my tiny little data set that, yeah, my kids are not seeking Judaism at all in the moment. And I'm curious as to, like, will that ever kick back in, or is it lost? But the truth is, honestly, I'm not modeling it very well either. So there's that piece too.
Let's hope we help, or they get connected with some powerful mentors at some point. But it is normal. It's super normal to also go on that path of not claiming anything, just bumping up against it all.
Yeah, Bill Plotkin in his work, if you don't know about Bill Plotkin's work, he writes about the universal journey of the human in their soul initiation. Nature and the human soul is his sort of like magnum opus work about this whole cycle of the human life. And he talks about the life stage that, Mo and Leah are in, this 20s, and it's the, it's the wanderer, that's the essence. And whether they come back to Judaism or not, maybe isn't the core question, but it's pretty typical to leave all the known structures, because it's about the discovery of self. It's about bumping into the world on your own terms, it's also, some level about rejecting that which we have inherited to discover. And then, for a lot of people, not for everyone, there is the next life stage, and hopefully, they find it themselves through synchronicity, or they're supported by good mentorship, like Rachel said. And then it is often the case, when supported and deriving from healthy, roots in your own culture, be it Judaism or otherwise, that we want to root back down as we're beginning our own families or beginning the next stage, which is like serving. And what do we serve, if we don't have culture to serve in? So I wouldn't be shocked, if in some way they find their way back because they had such a loving family that was rooted in Judaism. But, we'll see.
Yeah. I'll just add to that I think we're working with just an interesting moment where there's like these little pockets of like culturally rich Judaism, and it's can be hard to find, Judaism that's really alive in the world. So, if your kids were raised in a really alive Jewish space and then they go somewhere else, that might not be available as easily. And I think it then requires at some point them having like the pull back. And I think that does come, I've noticed it comes a lot when people are starting families, when they're like, oh, we want to have some sort of tradition to bring our children into to make sense of the world. But there's a lot of other reasons why people will be called back, at a later stage. The 20s are a lot of wandering, and I think the later 20s and early 30s is when you start really realize, like, coming to a different level of maturity and embeddedness back into your culture and back into that deeper ancestry. So yeah, I think they're probably just right on track, and to trust the journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And last thing I just want to add, Lisa, you also said about the question of your modeling. And I feel like what I've seen is like, because I work with a lot of parents of like youth, and parents so want to support their kids. What I've seen is when um, the parents step back in to like, cool, this is for me also, and get inspired and like dare to kind of find like what is their current edge. It really helps the kids also. And I feel like a lot of what we're talking about also really is cultural experimentation, and in a healthy way. But when you're coming from a culture like Judaism, like you can look at Shavuot and take the inspiration of the holiday, but they'd be like, maybe I'll just go on a hike up a hill and like do a like sit spot, or eat some cheesecake, which I found out is somehow part of the holiday because something to do with dairy, which I don't actually even like understand, but you know what I mean. Like, and then when your children come home, like, how do you invite them in? And also for me, really invite in the children, whether they're 40-year-old children like me, or of parents, or like five, into like their own leadership in the culture that we can provide the frame. And that's so much I think of what this embodied ritual space is like, how do we become co-creators with the culture that we're in, instead of feeling like it has to be static. I know that breaking out is what really has kept me engaged over time.
Yeah. And I think the really beautiful thing about Judaism is that it's both, a spiritual tradition, religion, and a culture. And the culture is something that you can't really leave or take out of a person. It's just something that is deeply woven into our DNA and into our upbringing. I'm particularly thinking about your children, how they were introduced. And hopefully that is something that really carries through, whether or not they decide to become, really dedicated and practicing as a Jew more explicitly. I find that a lot of people, it can take years, but that part in the DNA that's sitting in there eventually awakens again and says like, oh, I want to be met. And a lot of people come back to Judaism a lot later in life and realize like, wow, this is so special and what a unique privilege it is in these times to have been given this culture, in this diasporic time where so many people are displaced from their traditions. So I wouldn't be surprised, if your children do find their way back. And if they don't, also, I really do trust that everything that was given to them is supporting them, even, in a cultural, like having that cultural basket behind them is supporting them. as they go through their lives.
Mm, yeah, thank you, Sarai. Thank you, Lisa. Zelg, do you want to
Oh, I'm
hop
just
in after
curious
me?
if anyone else, anyone else has any other questions or comments about, rites of passage work, hearing what we're speaking about from our personal journeys, or how we've been inspired to offer through these various modalities. Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
Yael.
Yeah,
Thank
Elle.
you.
Yeah. Hi.
Yael.
So I met Zelig when he was Magid Zelig, and
Whoa.
Ooh.
we both were studying with the common teacher, Reb Sarah. And so I was born Jewish and wasn't raised Jewish, and I came to my Jewish path on an animist vision quest trip with Bill Plotkin's group. And so I traced my journey through all of this, and I love what you're saying about so many things. The reason I'm on the call is because now, 20 years later, as a person who's constantly on my own transformative journeys, now as a woman in her, I just turned 60 this year, and I have after spending 20 years of building, becoming a very trusted lay leader, an educator in the Jewish community. It's become everything, leading rites of passages, leading different types of things. I've come across needing to again let go of all of my structures, and I'm letting go of. I've said, "Hey, I'll see you later. I don't know when, but right now this is done. Like, and I got to do something else." And so, what I'm really curious about is, for whatever reason, I've ended up kind of holding this down on my own. I don't live near Wilderness Torah, so I've just kind of like made the best of what I could as a person who really thrives in those other environments. But here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, there isn't really much of that here. And so I've, created a lot of it on my own, holding my own Shabbats and stuff like that, and lots of other things. So I'm really intrigued about what your vision is for convening us, because I would love to come out of the wilderness and join you and become a part of something larger in Jewish rites of passages and embodied ritual. And so that's my question for you.
Amazing. Thank you. Great to see you again after a long time. Yeah, I mean, calling in like a chevre, of co-conspirators in the work of restoring rites of passage. I don't have an answer, but in some ways, that's what the circle represents, and I love that question. And how could we do that? How do we do that? I don't know, but thanks for asking. I know that Rachel, and I was hoping you might chime in, honey, but maybe I'll pull you in, is like at the cusp of beginning to explore like the next rite that she's approaching, which has to do with the menopausal period and what comes next. I don't know much about that, and just a personal connection in Santa Fe is Simon Month, if you don't know him yet, a really profound younger Jewish guy who's on a powerful path that connects to some of this. Maybe offline, I can make a personal connection just to weave people that are in the Santa Fe area. But I love this inquiry about, what's the circle, this is what great conferences are made of, or great councils, are made of. So, yeah, thanks for asking.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah, call it in, man. We definitely need it. And I'm curious, when you said that you're like leaving it all behind and just like needing to drop everything, is that because there's a deeper call to something, but you don't know what it is? Is it like, what's that motion grounded in?
Okay, since we don't have several hours, I will try
Yes,
to
thistle.
give you a little vissel of that. Yeah, it started about 3 years ago, and it's just kept building and building. And so there's Maybe a summary. I'm terrible at summarizing. I'm more of a storyteller, but the basics are that just so many structures have just pretty much most of the structures, the internal structures have collapsed, and I've been doing a lot of I've been led and followed and saying yes and listening, and so I thought this year I'm like, oh, it's going to be easier because like all that hard stuff's behind. But now now I'm in the aftermath of, oh, I actually the things, like a disenchant. It's not a disenchantment, just a knowing that, for instance, how I've been relating to Jewish practice for the last 20 years has come to a close. How I
Mm,
relate to God for the last 20 years since I've been on this journey, since I went on my
mm,
vision quest and was named by my ancestors as a Jewish shaman storyteller. And I've been pursuing that, having, a very, very steep learning curve from going from zero and being raised what I didn't even know with the story that Jews don't want us because we're poor and everybody else wants to kill us because we're Jews, post Holocaust, the whole thing. So it's been a 20-year journey, and it's very new for me in terms of what's happening. But to the point that I actually just wrote both to the communities I'm a part of very deeply and said, I don't know if I'm going to come, and I don't know when I'm going to come back,
mm.
but I need to let you know that this is what's happening. And they're very supportive, and it's great. And so there's a very big spaciousness.
Yeah,
And I'm sitting with that spaciousness. I don't feel at all concerned. I just think that it feels like a cycle has closed.
yeah.
And it, I don't know what it might look like. But I'm returning back to my roots, and my roots are rite of passages. My roots are the earth.
Mm,
My roots are an earth-based um, um, dedication, and so I just decided to come back to my altar that way and come back.
mm.
um you know I find myself wanting to sing, and I'm like, it ain't the prayers anymore. Like, it's not coming, that's not happening. And so I'm just being with it all. And so
Yeah,
when this came across and I'm like, oh, Jewish rites of passage and embodied, I'm like, oh, this is me. Hello, thank you, everybody. So I'm happy to be here, whatever that might look like. It's whatever. Happy to be here, a part of it.
beautiful. I'd I'd love to say just one thing, because there's obviously not enough time to get into the deeper deep. But um, if this resonates, if this is something that's useful, I just want to offer it in is that because a lot of us on this call, I'm noticing actually are older. There's not like a bunch of young people here. I don't know who the people with cameras off are, but um, I know for me, like as I walk away from the adulthood initiation portal and I'm walking on my journey, and now I'm facing what I would call the North Gate. This is this elder initiation rite, which I would imagine that is got to be somewhere in the sphere of your conscious or unconscious. It's in front of you there. Um, when I've sat in the deeper spaces to pray about it and to ask about it, what has been coming through for me at this point is for the female bodied folk is it, and I'm not sure about the male body, but for the female, it has to do with the black hole
Mm,
and the void and this
mhm,
place of the absolute nothingness that we have to sit and face and go down into the descent. And that black hole, as scary as it is, because it sucks in absolutely everything without consent, it is all going there. Um, it also creates life that sits at the center of every single solar system. I'm sorry, not so, every single galaxy. Apologies. It sits at the center of every galaxy, and it's what creates life because it has that rotation. And so there's something about the black hole and the nature of it. And I love what I'm already just in what you're sharing that has that quality. So let's leave it there. And I am happy to be part of the inquiry for the female bodied folk. That is the page I'm also on. If you want to at all reach out at some point.
Yeah, I would love to talk with you more, Rachel, about it,
Um,
because I think that that's where my interests lie as well. And just I'll say really quickly, I was in ceremony last week, and and void is exactly what arose. And
Yeah.
but how full of all the pregnant possibility it is. And there's a lot of like womb imagery and
Hmm.
it's very interesting. It's been,
Hmm.
I'd love to talk with you offline about it and yeah, see what happens.
Great. And I'll say that just to weave it back into the adulthood initiation, I just want to name that when I was on my journey in the deeper places of receiving vision around what it is to hold an adulthood initiation portal, I was told very clearly by the spirits that were guiding me, they said, you cannot hold this as an adult. You have to have elders holding this portal. So, and so I called the adulthood initiation the linchpin initiation rite, because you both need to really understand what it means to be a young person and come through the initiation rites that you maybe didn't get when you were 13 and 14 and whatever and 12. And so you have to look backwards and tend to that. But you also need the elders and need people who have initiated into their elder years to really hold this. So it calls forward the whole picture to come into clarification. And so I also applaud you on the journey, because we need elders. We really, really need them. So,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, thank you, Rahel. And
yeah.
yeah, and one thing I want to just add, it's kind of like a bigger teaching or rites of passage, because yeah, I really hear you in this like rite of passage moment in a way, like calling you, which I also really was feeling like vision, like what is the vision that will come from that void, or maybe it's just the surrender to that void place. But what I also know is when we're in moments when things are structures are breaking down, we're really bending towards that liminal place. And I think so much of it is like, how do we get ourselves wrapped in a cultural bundle? How do we get ourselves well held? And that's kind of like the preparation phase so we can really have a clear severance. And one simple thing, and this could be for any of us, because I think most of us are overdue for like this. Um, Maybe some of the men who are on this call who are part of Dom or might also do this, is really doing yeah, story share with your community about the stage of life that you're coming out of so as to honor it, harvest it, and put it down. It was traditional in many cultures, people would tell their life story prior to like dying so that they could actually release. And I found it such a beautiful, simple ceremony, but it's so profound and it weaves so much culture and community and gets people like holding and invested. And it's always so inspiring for the people that come. So, really, for any of us, that could be a good thing, but it's definitely a good thing as you feel yourself cusping on a lot of change. It's a good moment to get anchored, share your story, and then be able to surrender into what's next. So we have like 14 minutes left, so we still got plenty of time. Um, I want to see if there's any other questions or comments, or what's moving in people about what's been shared thus far. You can either raise your hand or just come off mute.
I feel something coming, but I also don't want to. I already had a moment to speak, so I want to make sure other people, if they feel something bubbling up, have that time.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Appreciate that. Yeah, let's give it a pause for a moment. Any of you out there that feel shy, welcome. Sarah, yeah, please chime in.
Hi. I
Hi.
just um I just been thinking about my Jewish family in Philadelphia. So I live in Chile and my husband is not Jewish and I don't have children. I don't have Jewish children. I'm a school teacher, so I do feel like an adult. But my Jewish experience is from Philadelphia and it's third, all the great grandparents all came from Russia and Ukraine. All the Jews I know, that's where they're all from. And they all came to Philadelphia and very few of them left. And I have like one cousin in Colorado, one in California, but like I'm like not the black sheep by any means, but I'm like one of the few who doesn't still live there. And like I don't think and there's very few who didn't marry Jewish. And we're not religious and definitely not spiritual. But they all go to Hebrew school and they get bar mitzvah and bar mitzvah, that's what you do. And you don't go to college very far away. You go to a state college and you marry Jewish and you stay close to your family. And there's like and they get married maybe and they have children maybe in their 20s and 30s. because they're not like wandering and going, and doing vision quests and they're and like I don't, they even laugh at the Judaism that they practice. Like I don't even think, I mean, I don't know if you know what I mean. Have you been to any East Coast bar mitzvahs where like the 13-year-old kids are like hating it? They're on the bima and they're like laughing at themselves because it's so ridiculous. I mean, that's and but they are getting married and having Jewish families.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. I don't know what yours. It just struck me a lot about like difference between East Coast and West Coast, and like they're marrying Jewish because they're living in a Jewish neighborhood because they're still in the same place from those great grandparents from the Ukraine, and
Yeah.
it's just that's just what has been going on in my head. I'll mute now if anybody has any comments or
Well, Sarah,
commentary.
I just think that's beautiful. Is I think what you're pointing out is one, the kind of resilience of culture, and I think part of what's like healthy and about culture is that you can kind of go on autopilot sometimes because the culture is giving you a map of what to like do. And of course, we know when it's to that like extreme, like that's what I was saying with the rote Judaism I was like coming from, and it can be very stale, and eventually people might disconnect. But at the same time, it does have its own cultural current, and people that are feeling more intact in culture don't always need to go on so many big quests of like meaning. And there's something beautiful about that. And I trust all of our souls, those of us that are questers, there's reasons why. And for certain souls, it's like so great just to have that culture. And then I think the question is, how do like we bridge? For Sarah, for me, the question would be like, how do you bridge and how do you start to translate some of the amazing depth? I mean, I'm part of a really deep community with you. Like, how do you bring that depth and use and trust your visionary space for when you go home to Philly and be with those people that are like gonna be like kind of like, wait, you're coming from where and what are you doing? But like you can translate into like a language and tradition they know and maybe bring a lot of that life to them in the same way you did when you were bat mitzvahed. So and I think that's kind of the question we're all in is like, how do we bridge? Because certainly I'm actually not trying to create, just a groovy subculture for the few people that are like doing all this epic deep work. Like I'm actually wanting to be part of large scale cultural change as a participant on planet Earth, which means we have to be really willing to translate and bridge and also humble ourselves, which is what's so great about Judaism is that like I can have my far out spiritual experience, on the hill, on quest, on like medicine, and I can come back and find ways that's already been being talked about by people in Judaism for the last 5,000 years, and then like be part of that living tradition, and that bridging that is like where for me the like connectivity life force comes like back. So that's what's so great about doing this work and having this tradition to stitch it back into.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? We have a few more minutes here. I'd love to hear from anybody else that hasn't spoken. Also, Lisa, I'm tracking you as well. So, there's any other voices that want to come in and share anything, even just how you're doing. Maybe you're like, I'm confused, or this isn't landing. Also welcome that. Doesn't need to just be only Stokage.
I just want to speak about the sandwich generation, which is where I'm at the moment. So I'm in my late 50s and so still have children at home who haven't launched yet, or like this generation or several generations back, that would have been the normal thing, right? Um, so they're still at home. And then I also have elderly uh end of life things happening on a regular basis. So uh and then sort of now that I have adult children, like my identity of being mom is not so huge, right? So really looking, I think what Yael said about like what's the next thing, and being okay with nothing right at the moment. And just but I do feel like I miss the metaphorical thinking. I miss the structure. I miss And if I want to lead the way that I'm being asked to lead, then where's the self-care, right? Where's the part that feeds me? Like I showed up here today and I was recognized as a mom, but not as Lisa, right? Because you don't know me that way. So really wanting to show up more as like uh, I make no apologies for who I am anymore. Like I just am who I am, and that's so fabulous and freeing, but it's also really hard to be wrapped in community because I just don't care as much as I used to about like how I'm perceived, or like I care about connection. Um, and I feel like I'm missing community, Jewish community for sure. And I can't seem to figure out like where I fit. So there's like some of that going on, and then like acknowledging that I'm actually autistic. And that's been new in the last like 5 years or 4 years. So like, how do I fit in with humanity? Is like totally up for the moment. And that I love what you said, John, about bridging and playing that game of like, well, who am I with now? And what am I being asked now in this moment, right? So I think like being absolutely present is all that I'm about right now, and like not being tied to any structure or any expectations or anything, and just being in the moment because I just don't know what's going to happen next. And I'm getting more comfortable with like living in that all the time. Yael's shaking her head. She gets it. Yeah.
Well, I just want to, like, Lisa, as someone who's known you a lot of years, it's really beautiful just to hear you and have you presence yourself and share where you're actually at. And in the context of this conversation about rites of passage, I think we've spoken to sort of the big, if you think about the compass or the calendar or the way the sun rises and sets, there's kind of four big initiations in a human's life. There's east, the rising sun, the birth. There's the south, the full sun of life, like adolescence. That's where the B mitzvah fits in. And there's like adulthood, which we've honed in on substantially here. Then there's this older initiation rite, which I think Rachel's knocking on the door of, perhaps it's elder rites, maybe it's called something else. But beyond these four big ones, which are sort of the four main life stages of a human being, there's all sorts of initiations. We're going through initiations constantly. The first time someone spends substantial time in darkness, that's an initiation into darkness. Usually you're pretty young, but maybe not, or cold, or solitude, et cetera. And I'm just hearing you, like, there's some initiations happening with, elder parents and approaching the thresholds and supporting what's coming there or what's happening there. There's the children moving on and becoming adults. Like that's a huge initiation for you, but it's not like recognized or supported. There, you named claiming autism and understanding your uniqueness in that way. Wow, that sounds like a huge initiation. How are you honoring those initiations for yourself, or more importantly, how are you embedding those and being supported by? I heard you say I don't care, but I also heard you yearning for community. And I'm like, wow, okay, what's that tension? And how do you reach for and call in support? And like, if you're in my local community, and you're not that far away, so let's talk maybe. But how do you create a circle around you to support these initiations, which are multifaceted? Like, I just want to honor and recognize that and say this is not just limited to these life stages. So thank you for bringing that forward.
Thanks, Alec. And yes, we will connect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Lisa, I just want to invite in the same thing I invited for Yael, which is all of you, was to maybe gather people and do a story share. Like even Lisa, that story share of waking up to like, whoa, I'm neuro different, and like there's like spice and beauty and challenge in that. Like even gathering people around you and sharing that story, and then how that might link to some of the other questions, it's always so good, and so many people are holding the same questions, and that really is what creates culture and gives that permission also to others. And I'm really here to support you. And often, something I also know of Sarai, Rahel, and Zelig, me, we've also done a lot of our own personal markings. Like I hung from a tree upside down on Rahel and Zog's land a few years ago. We've all done a lot of, and that was because I was in a big life moment that I needed like a serious ritual. And there was a lot, it was like 9 months of prep and some elders, but like there's small kind of like custom rituals we can create for ourselves or have people support us in creating to marking. So I want to say that's part of where this work really gets creative and takes off. And we can still do that embedded in community and actually need to be, and with the support of like mentors and guides. Like I had people holding me. So I just want to say also open Lisa for a convo at like any point. And I really see you just in a moment where like your soul is asking for it. And that's such a exciting place to be in. Okay, so we're almost at 7:30. We're pretty much right at time. I want to honor that. Is there any final words, Rahel or Zelig or Sarai, that you want to say before we hop off? Rahel, I see you. Hop in.
I just want to name real quick that you, Lisa, you're also pointing to, there is a rite of passage there. There's a first stage of adulthood and there's a second stage of adulthood. And the first stage is tending the nest and the little ones projects. But that initiation that you're at right now is letting them go. And then your arms get wider and wider and you're looking out, not here anymore, but here. And it's a different orientation. And it's traditionally would also, there would be a marking there and a cultural holding for you. And it's not here and you're feeling the loss of that. And it makes sense. And just, yeah, we kind of bring our intelligence back to call it in. Yeah.
Man.
Well, I would love to meet again if y'all would want to meet again. And I know we're going to talk offline, different people, but I think gathering in a group is a great idea and continuing to just let the seeds plant themselves and see what happens.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for that beautiful invitation. Yeah, I'll make sure to connect us all via email. Any other final words, Sarai, do you want to share by way of closing? Any final things,
I don't know. Can you
invitations?
guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, can you see me? Because you're
I can see you. Yeah.
okay. You guys are all frozen for some reason on my computer.
You're good.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everybody. This is a really rich conversation, and I think, Lisa and Yael, what you were pointing to around just feeling alone in it to some degree is really, unfortunately, very, very common experience in our society. And I just remember when I first started learning about these rites, how much grief I had of not having received that level of support and connection in my rites as a child and growing into my adulthood. So there's grief here, as we talk about restoring these rites, we have to recognize the places where they've been missing and that kind of hole that we've been feeling. And then from that place, there's an amazing opportunity for creativity, for dreaming into what we can create together. So thank you all for being part of this conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Sarai. Zelig, anything else you want to say by way of closing?
No, I just appreciate the convening. The questions are wonderful. And, this is partly inspired by the work we're doing. Brit Adam, brief mention is, Brit is covenant, Adam is human, also man. And it's the work of John and I to imagine and introduce a new rite for men in the Jewish community based on a lot of experience as well as vision. It's our second cohort. The first cohort was amazing. I've put that, John put that link in here if you're interested, check it out. Also, Rachel's link to Tree of Life Initiation for women. She's been doing it for 15 years. She's unique in that, beginning to train others in other places in the country to do that work. If you're curious, that link is in this chat here. And then, our individual work is here. So Sarai and John and Rachel were linked in here, and you can find me at rabbizelig.com. But I want to say thank you for Rachel and Sarai and John, and I'll include myself in that, and to say this cultural creativity, I think, is as important as in any legal fight we could do or any election. All those things are important too. To stop the bleeding, this is the cultural creativity work. This is where the evolution and revolution of humanity is happening. And I love hearing like, oh, I'm a part of that too. I imagine we're all a part of that. So I want to say thank you. And for those men who are here who are in conversation with us on Brit Adam, look forward to continuing that conversation.
And I want to also if you women know of good men, we've often had good men brought to us by good women in their courts in their life. So welcoming that, and it's thank you all. I'll send you an email with all the links to everything and places to follow up and contact info. I love the idea of getting together and seeing where this wants to go. So thank you all so much for showing up. Thank you everybody on the
Thank
recording.
you.
Have a really, really beautiful night,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody. Thanks so
Looking
much.
forward,
Beautiful.
looking forward to more
So
soon.
much.
Bye,
Ciao.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.